Good morning, everyone. Oh, that's nice. I really hope that you enjoy the new weather. We did that for you, so that you get to taste the full Greek experience. Well, and since this is day 2, I hope that you are having a good time. I would like to remind you all that the museum visit, the Museum of Acropolis visit, is tomorrow. For those of you who want to participate, please say so at the registration desk. There is a €20 ticket which has to be paid. If you've been there, it's still the same. If you haven't been there, it's amazing. So, consider it. Also, after the keynote session, we will be taking the group photo. I'm not sure whether it's going to happen outside. That depends on the weather. But please stick with us. We'll take the group photo. And then we'll be right back in for Dries and Dominique, which will be answering your questions in this room. Please use the form in the Dev Days website or scan this QR code, which is on your screen, or posted in a A4 paper card over there, you see it, and submit your questions. Now, let's all invite Jürgen Haas on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Was it a great party? Must have been late, I think. I saw some posts at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, maybe the room will be empty, but it isn't. Thanks for showing up. It's great. Happy to be here. Thanks for the Greek community. I have to say, you've done such a great job in organizing an event, which is outstanding, I have to say. Really great. Thanks for that. Now let's go on a journey. I want to invite you to come with me in a 30-plus year journey, which is my own, which is taking a rest here in Athens a few years later. There is some echo. I should go back probably. And yes, it started back in 1989 when I started my first company, my first business, which is the time before Drupal. So I have another career that I briefly want to talk about. It has been a long time. I started from scratch. It was a print publishing company. Yeah, there have been times where we haven't done things digitally. We have printed papers. They have dimensions like A4, 21 by 29.7, and you have to put all the content into that, and then page breaks come into play. Something we can't imagine nowadays unless we print PDFs, but we try to avoid them whenever possible, at least on websites, I hope. And we have done amazing things. Has anybody came in by airplane, which happened to be a Boeing? Everybody on Airbus? There is a Boeing, there is another one. The technical documentation and the maintenance manual has been printed and created by our software that we created back then. And it still is, so we call Boeing the biggest publisher in the world. The number of pages they produce every year is amazing, you can't believe that. And we had a few other clients like in the financial industry, in the scientific publishing industry, car manufacturers, the European Commission back then with 22 languages, translation and all that sort of stuff. And it was a great success. We went through a few mergers and acquisitions, and I'm really tired of that. I don't want to do that any time again. And I quit that company. So that first lesson that I learned was, at some point, it's no longer for me. And then you have to make a call and say, thank you, was a great time, goodbye, I need to go somewhere else. Main reason was the company grew to 3,500 people. I was a very tiny shareholder at that time, so I left with a lot of experience and no idea what to do next. And it was a big hole. That was 2005, and it took me about 2 years to find out what I would like to do next. I did some consultancy in between, and by accident, I came across Drupal. That was back in 2007, version 4.6, I believe. It could be 4.7, I can't remember for sure. And it was really funny. It was like Drupal found me. I I started to explore. I played around with it. We did some prototypes. We did amazing things. We had a website project for a client where we published 1.5 million nodes within 6 months. So that was a fairly big installation back then. And it just worked. It was just amazing. It looked a bit anxious. It was a bit like from the previous century. But that didn't frighten me at all, because my previous software, as powerful as it was, nobody in the world knew about it. And that's probably why I felt home with Drupal. It was so powerful as well, and almost nobody knew about it. It felt a bit like this is another great technology which lives in a niche, nobody knows about it, that must be for me. And then I also started to understand what it means that something is licensed as open source. And once I realized what that means, for me personally, but also for my clients and everybody around us, I really inhaled it and started to believe that this is what I want to help grow moving forward. I don't want to ever go back into those ages where we have to think about dongles and integrate them into our software to make sure that nobody is stealing it. And we spent so much time doing that, I believe it cost more than what we ever earned in revenue for that. But anyway, the lesson learned this time was leading-edge technology, a niche audience, and a reputation for being complicated. And then last but not least, and that's the one that we haven't resolved yet, I believe, both of my careers are in technology with not the best marketing in the world. Let's put it that way. Sounds familiar, right? So moving on to 2010, and I just take now the next decade, like up until 2020. That was like getting used to it, understanding all the building blocks, and getting to learn about what I call to myself the rock stars. In my view, like, people like Dries. Dries started this, and he did something amazing. And I was back in my little office, and I was looking at him at Dries notes. I went to Ghent the other day and looked at him talking live, and so on and so forth. And I thought, he's doing so great things, but he's just a very normal human being. He's somebody who is approachable, you can go to, you can talk to. It is just great fun. But there are others, like Gabo, like Wim, who was called the greatest engineer in software the other day, then all the core maintainers, then tools like Views, Drush and Mosh, and even Mosh, also somebody you can just ping, ask a question, talk to them, and have a great discussion with them. The most impressive one to me was the media module. That was created sometime 2014, maybe. Aaron Winborn. I thought that's exactly what was missing. That was a really, really big step for me. And then the personal story of Aaron that had some relation into my life as well, which made it even more special. And then there was a rules module. And I know there are a few of the former maintainers of the rules module in the room as well. And that has been a major building block for my personal career as well. I find it really, really impressive what has been done, what the module can do, and how we can all benefit from it. So it was to me like, this is all gifts, I just receive, I get so much, I can't believe it. And I was asking myself, within all that shininess, how can I make a contribution to that has any kind of relevance? Everything is already there, like, what can I do to give something back? So the lesson learned for that period to me personally was like doing API first, then going through the hassle to also rebuild it on top of Symfony. That have all been the right building blocks. And I thought, that's exactly right. I will spend the rest of my career on top of that. So what is it that I can do to give back? And that's when ECA comes into play. And that was really funny. We had a client, and the great opportunity was because we went on Symfony, we made things object-oriented, we really modernized our platform, which meant that some tools, like views, like rules, and a few others, they had a hard time to actually migrate themselves over into that modern world. And we had several occasions when we looked into the rules module, can we use that in the Drupal 8, 9, 10 era when we migrate sites? And as much as we loved the rules module, we got the feeling that it had its time, its great time in Drupal 7, but it will probably never make it to Drupal 8 in a way that is sustainable, that can still be maintained and will be powerful and scalable. So we had a huge project with a Swiss client who wanted to migrate an intranet with thousands of rules onto Drupal 8 back then. And we said, okay, if you want to do that, we need to build something for you to replace the rules module. And we said, we can do that, we have an idea. And I posted about the idea on, back then it was called Twitter. Because it was Matt Clement who posted something like, wouldn't it be nice if we had a graphical tool to build workflows? And I responded and said like, oh, I'm just about to build a prototype for that. So if it happens that you have resources to do something more on it, I'm here as well. We should probably then at least share notes, if nothing else. A day after that, somebody approached me and said, did you know that you posted something like that, almost exactly the same wordings 5 years earlier? And I didn't, but he sent me a link to that tweet back then. And there was another client where I introduced the same idea. Unfortunately, back then, this client didn't go for it. But my second attempt, the client said, you know what? I'm happy with the proposal. We have a budget. We have already agreed that. If you can build what we need within budget and without a delay for the project, we are okay with it if you do that as an open source module. And I have to say, this is something I can recommend to everybody, that this is what we always do. If we talk to a client, before we start building something for them, if it needs a new module, we always talk to them about doing that as open source on Drupal.org from day one and before we started coding. Why? Because at that point, there is no real relationship between the client and that code. They don't have a feeling of ownership yet at that moment in time, so they feel okay, like paying for something that others can use as long as it solves their own problem. If you ask the same question when the project is finished and they already paid for it, you always get a reaction like, maybe there is something in it which is, proprietary to myself, which is some secrets about my business, sharing something that nobody else should know. Very often you then get a no. We don't like that idea. Do it on day one, do it before you start, and most of the clients will agree that you do that as open source. And the fact that we have done it as open source and we started very early on talking about it. It was COVID time, by the way. There had been lots of video meetings, online meetings, and we started presenting there, showing the little progress that we made with the result that, well, there's a fun story about that one. The first time I showed it, that was 3 months into the project. It was already working, it had a UI, it had an interface, and it was doing stuff it was supposed to do. And I showed that to a German, Austrian, Swiss collaboration meetup that we did back then, and did a blog post about it the day after that. And it was a Friday. And on Saturday, the issue queue of ECA suddenly started to grow. One person, started to file issues there, not bug reports, but questions about the architecture, ideas, suggestions, and stuff like that. And I was wondering, who is that? I didn't know the guy. And the content of all those issues was so qualified that I thought, bloody hell, there is no documentation. There is not even an architecture diagram or anything. But that guy was asking very, very reasonable questions. And I thought, okay, I should probably get in touch with him, I think it was. That was obvious to see. And I contacted him on Monday and said, I have no idea who you are, but I get the feeling we should talk. And he said, yeah, that's fine. So we went on a call, and I said, what was happening? And he said, you know what? I was hired by a company with the sole purpose to write a concept on how to replace rules for Drupal 8. And I finished my white paper last week on Friday. And when I closed my laptop, I went on my mobile phone, and I found your blog post. Don't know why. And then he threw his laptop away, and his girlfriend asked him, what's going on? What happened? And he said, you know what? I've just finished my white paper, and somebody else has built that software that I described in my white paper in exactly that way as I would have liked to do it. And the good thing about that story is that I said, well, that sounds great. Let's work together then. And he was employed by a company in Munich. We rang his boss and said, look, this is where we are. Are you okay in us sharing resources? And he said, well, that's great. And you know what? Within a day, we doubled our resources. It wasn't just me, it was two of us. And what was really funny about it, that bloke is in the Drupal community as long as I have been, and he only lives 50 kilometers from my place, and we never met in life before. This is how ECA looked in the early days, and the lesson that we learned back then was build in the open, share it early, and listen. Because if the community, if fellows, if other people who are doing similar things or thinking about similar things, they have no chance finding you if you are not talking about it. So do that as soon as possible. So a year later, we published 1.0 of ECA. That was in July 2021. It took us exactly 365 days from the first commit to the 1.0 release. And we had a high write just after that. It was so great. We had lots of installations. We had very few bug reports. We had a lot of enthusiasm. We had splash awards. They even introduced some special, medals and stuff like that, because everybody was so excited about it, including ourselves. Then there have been podcasts, there have been interviews, there have been almost 100 contrib modules that decided to extend ECA. There was real energy in it. It was like, its own ecosystem is starting to build. And that was really rewarding. But I have to say, don't get me wrong, all of what happened there, all the excitement, hasn't been 2 or 4 hands and 2 brains. What it was is almost 400 people contributing to that success. You probably find your face on there, and you may ask yourself, well, at most, I probably have submitted a support request in the issue queue. How is that contribution to the success of the module? Well, any single question that you ask, any single case where somebody asks for support, helps us to understand where the problems are and what we need to fix, right? There is either something wrong in the documentation, or the product is not intuitive, or whatever. Everybody contributes regardless how big or small the contribution might be. To me, this is really, really important. It's never a single person building something, it's always something between us. So, the lesson learned here, to me, is that build it together and talk about it. Those two things, none of that individually can ever be successful. Only as a tandem are they a great thing, right? Remember, we talked about bad marketing at the beginning? That's exactly what I mean by that. It doesn't matter how great our software is that we build. We need to tell a great story about it as well, because otherwise it's just great technology sitting in a niche, nobody knowing about it. But then we hit a wall. And that was 2023, about a year later. It felt like something is holding us back. Something is holding ECA back. And it was, to be honest, quite obvious what it is. It's just too difficult to use. And the learning curve is too steep. It's hard to debug. Well, it's almost impossible to debug. And we had ideas on how we could change that. And as it happened, early 2023, there was DrupalCon in Pittsburgh. And somebody had the idea to launch Pittsburgh at that DrupalCon, which was a competition where people could submit ideas how they want to innovate, but they need cash for that. They need funding. They need resources, right? So we applied for that, and it was probably 16 projects, if I remember right, and 8 or 9 got some funding, and we haven't been lucky. We didn't get any. Maybe because we just didn't explain in the right way what the benefit would be if we could move forward. So we haven't been successful at that point. So what we've learned from that is open source is always having the problem that it needs not only momentum, but it also needs funding. And we are talking about that requirement in almost every session on almost every Drupal event. And not only Drupal, that is an issue for open source in general. So there we were. What can we do? And then a breakthrough happened, totally unexpected, and that was again 1 year later. I got a message on Slack from Gabor. And the question was, are you prepared to travel 20 hours one way to be on stage for 6 minutes? He was talking about Portland, DrupalCon, Portland on the West Coast. And I thought, 20-hour travel, that's tough. But being on stage on a DrupalCon, I can't say no. I would probably travel 200 hours to get there. So I said yes, and he was probably sitting there wondering why this guy is saying yes, but there I was. He helped me to get my part of the presentation right over a longer period of time, which was pretty stressful as well. And then I arrived in Portland, and what happened there, DrupalCon started off with a Dries note, right? And what happened there was Dries was drawing some dark pictures, and it was all threatening, and we had to do something. And I was wondering what's going on here. And then he turned the mood around a bit and came up with the proposal of what was called Starshot back then. And as part of the Dries note, he did something that, in my memory, he has never done before. He asked people to get up to the microphone and propose some pledges on how they want to contribute to Starshot, if they are excited about it. And I thought, you know what? Everything he talked about, making Drupal easy, make it easy to install, avoid the requirement for coding, make it a product for people who are probably marketeers or other non-technical people. And I thought, you know what? This is a marketing story for what I want to do all the time with ECA. This is exactly what I wished Drupal would have done many, many years ago. So I got up, got to the microphone, and pledged, like, if ECA will be part of Starshot, I pledge that I will maintain ECA for the rest of my life. And I was serious about it, and lots of people laughed about it, and Dries was saying something like, this is like, you know, pledging your first son or something. And what I didn't expect was there was so much recognition about that statement, and I really stay to it still today. It's really, really great. What nobody really realized was that if I'm going to maintain ECA for the rest of my life, or the rest of the community has to make sure that Drupal is around for as long as this as well, right? So that was the deal, but nobody talked about it. So what's the lesson learned out of that is that some things sometimes happen that you can't plan for. You know, I wasn't able to get Gabor to give me a call. I couldn't make Dries to make that Starshot announcement. The only thing that was possible by myself was be prepared for that moment in time. You know, if it happens, don't be afraid, go for it. Jump into that cold water if necessary. So it was really great to be part of the Starshot development team, if that's the right phrase. Maybe Drupal CMS, as it's called today, is not what everybody was hoping for. Maybe it's not what you were hoping for. It's maybe not complete still today. But what Drupal CMS did, in my view, is it brought us together as a community again in a way that I was missing before. Like, I have suddenly seen between Portland and Atlanta, I have seen the community and agencies working together in a way that was so powerful and so different from everything I saw before that I thought, wonderful, this is unlocking all the energy that we have. And ECA was part of it, and a lot of people got suddenly excited. I remember one day there was something a module couldn't do, and then Adam proposed, let's do it with ECA. So we coded a little bit. 5 minutes later, it was just solving the problem. And I remember one of the core maintainers was responding in an issue comment saying, well, actually, does it mean that a little bit of YAML is doing what otherwise would take hundreds of lines of PHP code plus all the tests we have to write? And it felt like suddenly it made click. Like, yes, we have something which is no code, low code, which does powerful things, but doesn't create even more code that later on needs to be maintained. Talking about custom code here. And then something happened a year later in Atlanta. That was just when Drupal CMS was officially launched. We met over there, we had contribution day, and I remember over the 3 years up to that point of the ECA existence, I had many times when people showed up and said, look, I like the idea of having a diagram to just visualize how complex stuff works. And we would like to use that for other things, like, for example, migration and other things. And I kept saying, I don't think that's a good idea. And I was driven by that inside knowledge that, yes, we decoupled ECA as a black box in the background and BPMN as the visualizer in the foreground, in the front end. But I knew there have been still some interconnections between the two. And in Atlanta, we had a discussion, many developers sitting around the table, and I suddenly said, let's rethink that no that came from my side for a long period of time. And we decided to decouple ECA from the front end entirely. And that was a tough time, discussing things to have a back-end system, which is the thing on the left, and a front-end system, the thing on the right, and building it in a way that the two don't know anything, really nothing about each other. That's abstraction to a level which doesn't happen very often. And it was just hurting our brain, drawing the pictures and designing all of that. It didn't take long. We went for it, and we then came up with that modular API, which is now in existence. And the lesson learned from that exercise was that before you scale, sometimes it's necessary to refactor. Regardless how much time you spend in a proper architecture right at the beginning, you are not always getting everything right. So be honest with yourself and rethink certain components every now and then, and go for it when it's necessary. So that was about 12 months ago. And still in 2025, that 1% came around the corner. So what might that be? Well, I had the opportunity to have some discussions with Dries about the orchestration stuff, integrating Drupal with active pieces, just prototyping, playing around with ideas. How can we modernize? Let's innovate, let's test, let's do certain things. And it gave me the opportunity to draw a little bit more attention to ECA for Dries as well. And he spent some time playing with it. And one day he came back and said, you know what? I have to be honest here. That's Dries speaking. He was saying, like, I was told for years that ECA is really powerful. But I have to say, it's unusable. Well, he said, it's usable, but probably only by the 1% most qualified and experienced Drupal users, but not by anybody else. And he said, and I can't use it myself. I don't know how it works. And when something like that happens, you have two choices. The first choice is you turn around and say to that guy, you know what, I think it's better for you to learn Drupal first, right? And immediately, without knowing what the second option is, I knew that one doesn't work. I shouldn't go for that, right? So I honestly thought about it, and for everybody who knows Dries, he was not saying that in a harmful way at all. He was putting that on me in a way, and he knew how to use ECA, by the way, but he was using that to get me thinking. And I want to quote him by saying feedback is a gift. And it was a gift. It was eye-opening. It was helping me to understand where the real problem lies, right? We have to do something about it. I had no idea what that would be, but I knew action is necessary. We need to do something about it. But that's only possible if your brain, if your perception, if you are open to it, and if you are ready to take that gift. And then something else happened. Working through all the challenges, how can we approach that problem? I was in IT for 35 years, but I haven't done that exercise before. UX first. I don't know how it happened, but I came together with Emma and with Mark. Emma is in the room as well. She is taking a very important role in Drupal in general. And for some reason, she was interested in this ECA journey as well and offered help. And Mark, who is part of the Canvas team, he offered help as well. And we came together, I think that was late November last year, and we started discussing what is ECA, what problem does it solve, and what are the challenges for the users. And we started writing them down. We have documents where we have really fixed in writing what is the pain that all the users are going through. Without that understanding, it's not possible to move forward. And I'm really, really grateful for that experience. You know, UX afterwards doesn't work. Start with it right from the beginning. And it changed the way how I approach software problems ever since, and I don't think I will ever go back again, because it makes so much sense. If you are able to describe the problem that you want to solve, not thinking about what's technically possible. That's actually how we started ECA. We thought about what can we do on the platform, on Drupal, what is technically possible. We didn't think about the user and whether they want to use that, right? And that's what I learned here. Think about the problem the user faces every day. How do they want to use it, and how do I get them to love my product? You know, if you have to force them to use it, you will not be successful. And that started an innovation boost. You know, talking about UX first, we came up with ideas that haven't been thought about ever before. And cutting that story short, there was one conclusion that we came up with. Regardless how much effort we put into a graphical UI to automate things in Drupal, it will never ever be something for everybody. It will probably be something that more people like to use, but it will not be for everybody. Like if we build automations, we have to build loops sometimes, and conditions, and so on and so forth. There are people in the world who are just not thinking that way. They are thinking differently, right? So whatever we put into the UI, it's not for them. So we thought, is there a way to bring ECA to those people in a completely different way? And we came up with what we currently call in-place customization. And here's a little video showing how that works. So we have decided to start with forms first. Why? Because altering forms is the #1 hook that's been used in Drupal. Well, I'm making that up because we don't have telemetry. But looking into custom projects, the hook form alter is the one that you can find everywhere. And what's happening here is the user is working on a form and thinks, I would like to modify that. I don't like a label of a field. Now, in the past, they had to write PHP code. Later on, they were able to open ECA and build a model to do that. Both of which are things that are possible, but not easy to use. Why not bringing that functionality into the UI where they already are, right? And offer them prepared ECA functionality that they can only pick and choose, put in a label string, and that's it. And having said that, don't even expect them to know what ECA is. Don't talk about that there is ECA even involved, because it's not relevant for the user. It's a feature in the UI they are looking for. You have to make sure that they find it, make it easy to use, and ECA is doing all the hard stuff in the background. No need for them to know. So that's great, and that's only forms. There is so many other places in Drupal that we want to bring that in-place customization to as well. But we are not enough people to do that. We need input from your side. So if this idea kicks something in your brain, think about it, help us, approach us, give us ideas, or even give us helping hands. But there are more technical users, and on dev days, I'm sure most of us are, and they had some pain with BPMN as well. So we thought, okay, let's modernize there too. And now there is a modern UI based on React Flow where this is just a quick insight, but the biggest pain is how can I debug what I just developed? And what we've done is there is a test button. ECA in the background is waiting for that event to happen. Somebody is logging in, and in the background, ECA recognized, oh, that just happened. Let's collect all the data that was available when that event was processed. And we bring that to the forefront and allow you to step through, step by step, action by action, condition by condition, and get the information about all the tokens, all the variables, all the placeholders that were available at that moment in time. I call that Xdebug on steroids in your browser, right? It's not complicated anymore to find out why something isn't working as you intended it, and you can fix it. So that was a breakthrough. We presented that three weeks ago in Chicago. We tagged version 1.0. It's available. You can use it. You can have fun with it, and we can build on top of it. But the lesson learned here is that sometimes things have to come together to make something possible. Imagine we would have gotten the grant 3 years ago in Pittsburgh. We just wouldn't have been ready for it. Now we are. There was feedback from Dries, there was help from Emma, and there was AI agents. They helped us to actually get the ideas that we had in mind, and ideas that we had in mind for so long. And I'm not only talking about those 3 years since Pittsburgh, I'm talking about everything that happened to me for the last 37 years, from 1989, right? All that history, all that experience that I was able to collect, that all the other people who contributed were able to collect, have been necessary to go that next step. And I would like to emphasize that we are now 45 minutes in, almost, into that presentation, and this is the first time that I mention AI. That doesn't happen too often nowadays. And that's not because I don't like AI or I want to hide it or anything else. No, it is because AI, to me, is an amazing tool. It helped me to get a task done, and I believe it helped me to do that task well, but that's about it, right? So it's not a hype, it's not anything else. All the decisions that have been made, what's the problem? How do we want to solve it? How do people like it? All of that came from us. All of that came from the architects that have been involved in that decision-making processes. So I'm glad that it just came together early this year. We made something which has been great, and now we are here in Athens. And what does it mean for us to move forward? Well, I ask myself, what is the next shiny things that starts today, tomorrow, Saturday in Contrib Room? It doesn't have to be a big thing. I'm sure there are dozens of smaller things that will make a difference in the next coming years. And I think this is great. I think this is exactly why we are here. I'm sharing my journey that I went through because it has been exciting to me. It has been rewarding. It has been fantastic. And you know what? Only because it happened as part of the Drupal community. I'm sure this wouldn't have been possible elsewhere. And I would like to encourage everybody in the room and outside who is probably watching that later. If you have an opportunity, if you have an idea, if you have a desire, if you have anything you would like to make real, don't be shy, go for it. Go out and find others who can help you to make that possible. I've done it, and I came for the code in 2007. The reason I'm still here is not the code, that's you, that's the community, that's why all that happens. And I can tell you this is so exciting, and I want you to have the same experience. But I also have a wish to everybody, which is like, I hope what I'm talking about is demonstrating how much fun I have. You know, I really enjoy what I'm doing. And I want that we tell those stories everywhere, because those juniors that we spoke about yesterday, I think it was Christian in his presentation who said, like, where are the juniors? Why are we all getting older? All the parties are finishing sooner than they ever have, right? Why is that happening? Because we don't have the youngsters. Well, if we talk about PHP being probably a dinosaur, which, yeah, we have to argue with ourselves that we are still working with PHP. No, that's not the story that those people want to hear. They want to hear fun stories. If we tell them, and I'm saying that because I really experienced that, it is great fun to solve real problems with Drupal. If we tell that story to the youngsters, they want to be part of that journey, right? So let's go out, let's talk about the nice stories, and that's how we grow. I strongly believe that. So that's about it. If you want to find me, there is a short link, golakedrops.com, which is my company, Jürgen Haas, or you find me on Drupal.org, in Slack, or elsewhere with the same handle. And that's about it. I think it's 11 sharp, just on time. But if there are any questions, I'm ready to answer them now on stage or later on in the hallway, in the Contrib room, whatever. I'm around, but I want to thank you for all your attention, and thanks for being here, although there was a party yesterday. Thank you. I was told there is a microphone if anybody has a question. That's not the case. There is one. Oh, over there, yeah.
Hi, fantastic keynote. My question is, during the 3 years that you spent in development, what were some of the challenges that you encountered during the development?
Do you mean challenges in development at the beginning or now with that latest project?
Either or.
Okay. I'm not a trained or educated developer. I've learned all of that myself, like probably many have. And at the very beginning, seeing the code of Drupal and not finding a lot of documentation has been a challenge to me. But not for long. I don't know why, but I can't share that same negative experience that many others are experiencing, that it's so hard to learn Drupal. I can't really relate to that problem. Because what I found was, I created my Drupal.org account in 2007, right on day one. And the fact that you can go there, ask questions, and get response from everybody, like, you know, it doesn't matter how long somebody has been on Drupal, everybody is willing to help. I realized that if I'm not holding back, but telling somebody, you know what, there is something I don't know, can you help me to understand? There is always somebody standing up and offering a helping hand. I've seen lots of people who tried for themselves for very long before they ever ask somebody else, or there are probably even more people who never asked for help but walked away somewhere else. I haven't had that because of a very positive experience very early on, that I learned that in this community you can ask any question, you get help. And I hope we continue doing that. Even then, if somebody is obviously not asking their own question, but maybe a question from an LLM, if you like, I think that's still valid to do for them to understand, to try understand Drupal. And I wish that we can still be as helpful as we have been all the time and helping them as well. Maybe not directly understanding Drupal itself, but help them to use agents, AI, and LLM in a better way so that they get to a better result. So to me, summary, the biggest challenge was learning. The good news was there are opportunities to get help if you need it. There was another question over there.
Hello. This is not a question, this is just a story. Some months ago, we had a project that we had created some GraphQL sub-modules for a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an issue where I was asking about a list of such modules and if I should publish them. And then the issue was stuck, and I got some answers, and they said, okay. But then some people said, look, I have a customer that needs that GraphQL CRUD modules. And he created the module empty, he made me a maintainer, and then I published it in the next day. And that was, I said, okay, that is how Drupal community works. It was so fast and so, it was something new for me.
Uh-huh.
I mean.
But it sounds like a great experience, right?
Yes, I was a maintainer of some modules, but I never did that for someone who wanted something so fast.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like a delivery, and it was very nice.
Good.
I was pleasant for that.
You should share that story.
Yes, I shared it now.
Yeah, now, exactly. Thanks for that. Okay, time. Oh, there is another question.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for another question.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the interesting session.
Thank you.